This is a video series where we highlight people in the quant trading community who post amazing content, deserve much more recognition. And so today we have with us Alexander Fleiss, the current CEO, chairman, and co-founder of Rebellion Research. So Alex, my first question to you is, what is Rebellion Research and what's the story behind it?
So Rebellion Research is a think tank, which originated as a hedge fund. We still have a hedge fund, but that's just the very, very beginning, the beginning of the genesis of what is Rebellion Research, which is really kind of an educational pursuit. And so we became well known. We grew to 5 million readers last year through reviewing research, actually. I myself have written 20 research papers, and I'm an editor of the Journal of Financial Science, which is a part of the Journal of Portfolio Management, one of it's the Marcos Lopez de Prada, Alexander Lipton journal. So I have been involved in AI since the 90s when I read UCLA Professor Judea Pearl's work on probabilistic Bayesian networks, and that inspired me to build my original AI at Rebellion. We have a Bayesian networks that essentially monitors the global economy and creates long-term portfolios. And so I started teaching at Cornell in 2015, done a few semesters there, working on machine learning for long-term portfolio management. And then a few years ago, the director of Cornell Financial Engineering asked me to throw the school's first conference, since Rebellion is essentially a quantum media brand at this point. Over 2/3 of our readers actually have a master's degree or a PhD degree in higher. And so much of our content is extremely academic, extremely high level, and many of our guest authors have been Nobel Prize, Pulitzer Prize, Fields Medal, Turing, and that's what we try to do with our conversations for our own YouTube shows. Just talk to intelligent people, get them to share their knowledge. And so Rebellion Research is a quant educational media company. It's also a money manager. Our robo-advisory has about 1,000 clients, and we're also a hedge fund. But we're also throwing conferences now. We've thrown conferences for like 6 schools. And the Navy, we did it last fall in Washington, D.C. That was a lot of fun. And really, the idea of Rebellion is education. And we've also started actually a college ranking index, which has grown immensely in popularity. Had over 500,000 readers last year of our college ranking index. And so we've covered about 1,500 schools. We have another 13,000 to go. And it's tough. Each school takes a bit of time to cover, but it's a lot of fun. It lends perfectly to our educational thesis. And, I love building machine learning portfolio managers, but I need other pursuits in life. I'm an Amherst College graduate, so with a liberal arts education, I enjoyed going from mathematics to architecture of cathedrals to the economics of 16th century England. So, I like a variety and
Amazing.
about variety.
Yeah. Speaking of events, by the way, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you now is actually because you're hosting an amazing event on April 4th, which not only am I attending, but a lot of other people in our community are also attending. And so I'd love to just learn more if you could explain this upcoming event in New York and who should come.
Yeah, so it's become super exciting. It really is an event. To call it a conference is kind of an understatement, if you will.
Yeah, it's cold. Yeah.
I have been involved with the Fordham School of Quantitative Finance now for maybe a decade. My friend Sudeep Gupta, who's actually going to be at the conference as well, is a Johns Hopkins professor now. Sudeep used to be the dean and the director, and so he's the one who brought me into Fordham back. And so Fordham saw the conferences at Cornell, and they said, "Hey, we'd love for Rebellion Research to do something at Fordham." And these are just wonderful events where there's so much education. But most importantly, the Fordham School of Quantitative Finance gets a lot of notoriety in the quant community. And for every school, as we know in today's world, from Harvard to whomever, gaining students is a problem. And Harvard early admits we're down 23%. So applications. So every school is on the defense when it comes to gaining students. And Rebellion's educational conferences have consistently shown to lead to a higher application pool after the conferences. So we're pretty proud of both the West Coast and East Coast. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it's a very simple. Our conversations, there's no pizzazz, there's no smoke and mirrors. Our conferences are very simple, very simplistic. What we focus on are bringing in the smartest people we can find, and that's how I came across you, Christina. You're one of the smartest minds I could find, and we work to bring the smartest people in. And if you look through the Fordham agenda, even the people who have, I don't want to say the lowliest titles, but the lowliest titles, in my opinion, are probably some of the smartest people at the conferences. And I have those individuals coming, and they're all great firms still. For instance, one of the attendees is a former student of mine who's a quant trader at one of the top 5 quant funds, but he's not a director of a division, but he is still a super genius who has impressed the absolute heck out of me. And so this conference, I try to not just bring in huge division heads, but also really some up and comers in the hedge fund industry who are just super impressive. And not to brag, but I've had a pretty good track record of calling. A lot of these people I brought in are now moving up quickly, whether it's a point 72 or a Citadel. So I look for great research. That's probably the number one reason I invite someone. If you're head of data at point 72, hey, everybody wants you there. Referring to my friend Samir. But at the same time, for random quant trader ABC, if random quant trader ABC has a great piece of research that I covered, I'm going to want to invite that person to come speak at the conference. And that's kind of how we've done it. But yeah, we really just try to seek out the smartest minds. At the MIT conference, when we first met maybe a year or two ago, we even had Gary Marcus come. And Gary Marcus is not in quantitative finance. Gary Marcus is an AI mind fighting with Jan LeCun all the time. But at the same time, in the quant world of today, we want AI perspective. We want to learn. And so, for instance, one of the people coming to the quant conference at Fordham is Dr. Iona Boyer, who is one of the highest ranking AI minds at NVIDIA. She's one of the most published minds there. And when you have a name like NVIDIA, and when you have one of their leaders in AI, you just have priceless information. Everybody wants to know what NVIDIA is doing and thinking when it comes to AI. And so NVIDIA, by the way, is in the financial services business. So it's not like they don't not make sense at a quant conference. They absolutely make sense at a quant conference. But at the same time, they're so much more important than just quant. They're very much about kind of where the world is turning. And so these quant conferences that you've been a part of, as you know, we're really just trying to learn as much as we possibly can. And that's what creates a great conference at the end, is this kind of this desire, when you climb Mount Everest, you want to just get to the top of a mountain. My mountain for these conferences is just to get the very, very, very smartest people I can. And yes, I'm very much a behind the scenes guy because I don't, I'm a smart enough individual. I've taught at a few schools and whatnot, but I have a great uncle who was nominated for a Nobel Prize and was on the Manhattan Project and was also the chair of the chemistry department at USC. And he told me, he said, Alex, you don't have a high enough IQ to be a super great scientist. So maybe you should be like a professor, an administrator type of situation, don't. And so I was always, okay, well, I guess if I'm not going to be a Feynman, I'll just try and work and do what I can. But I've still done a lot of research and work, but nevertheless, I try to be behind the scenes.
Oh, you've done so much. I was going to actually say if there's any career advice we give to people. I can already tell
yes. I have the greatest career advice ever. Okay. And my career advice actually spawned a great friendship of mine. Dr. Linda Kreitzman, Dean of Berkeley Business School, and I have become good friends for a while now because we have a lot of weird things in common. One of which is the same advice we always give to every student, which is take your aiming sight for pleasure and take your aiming sight for intellectual pure stimulation. And when you can align them perfectly, that's when you're going to have a great career trajectory. And so you need to find what you love doing more than anything else and do that. And if you're like, well, I don't, then don't be a programmer, because obviously that's not the skill you have. You need to have, the term I believe is come to Jesus. I mean, I'm not religious nor Jewish. I mean, I'm Jewish, but I'm Jewish culturally. I'm a big Zionist, but I don't believe in God. I think we're all just creatures who are here and will die eventually. But the term coming to Jesus means you got to be honest with yourself. And when it comes to the best career advice, you must be honest with yourself and say, what am I good at? And what do I enjoy doing? If you don't focus on what you're good at and what you enjoy, your output and your productivity over time will slip. You will not be as successful. You will not make as much money. You will not be as satisfied. If you focus on what you're happiest with, I know it sounds simplistic, but most people just do not do this. You will be much more satisfied in life. And we live in a very, very diverse economy in America. This one thing that sets America apart from every other country is the diversity of our economy, and the intricacy of our economy allows for very niche jobs for almost any type of individual interest. We're not in the 1950s IBM salesman economy anymore. We are in a new world that offers a host of different jobs for the oddest personalities, if you will. And if you're not comfortable talking to human beings, there are jobs for you. And if you're a person who only wants to talk to human beings, there's jobs for you too. It's a great time to be a job seeker.
You know what's crazy though is for me as a job reviewer, applicant reviewer, we got like 20,000 resumes in January, and It is very obvious to me when we see a resume, usually a computer science student, and it's obvious when they hate what they're doing. It's obvious when they just took the advice that society has given them throughout growing up saying you must major in computer science. But in reality, there's so many other jobs out there. And I think you're absolutely right about that. It's obvious when people love it too, by the way, when they live and breathe computer science or quant research on the side, right? Like one of the things is they can help write for you, publish research reports for Rebellion Research, right? If they do things on the side that truly show that they're passionate about the subject or the industry outside of school, I think that really says a lot. And so career advice wise, I was like, be affiliated with Alex somehow, go to his events, write for Rebellion Research. There's so many different possibilities there. Even as a student, I feel like that people typically overlook or aren't aware of.
Rebellion has sent just an absurd amount of students to Goldman Sachs and McKinsey because, one, I focus on students from the top echelons, and that's where these organizations want to fish from. But I also I find these students and I say, okay, let's look at where are you passionate. If you're passionate on Julius Caesar's battle tactics, that's going to be your best essay. Now, if we show that to a McKinsey recruiter, that will impress a McKinsey recruiter more than a mediocre biology essay or a mediocre business essay. What is impressive in life is when passions meet your workload, because you're doing it because it's fun. You're not doing it because you have to. When you do things because they're fun, that's when you get to the Italian Renaissance level of detail. The beauty is in every little bit of the detail. And so that's the type of work that gets you to the best jobs. And so you really need to be open-minded in today's society and accept the fact that whatever you might have thought was your career path yesterday or even this morning might not be. Before we actually got on this, I was talking to a student who is at one of the big consulting firms, and he's like, Alex, a lot of my students will come back to me 5-10 years after we've worked together for career advice, and they'll say, hey, this is where I ended up. And often I'll be like, but you shouldn't have gone that way. We talked about it. We knew investment banking wasn't the thing for you. We knew corporate consulting wasn't the thing for you. And often, they'll say, okay, so what is your deep passion? Oh, well, music. So then you should work in the music industry. Well, I've always wanted to work in the music industry. Well, why haven't you? Well, and so it's simple, but it's amazing. Kids, people don't follow their dreams. But when you follow your dreams, you do so much better, so much better. And so I'm going to help this student of mine from 5-6 years ago pivot from corporate consulting to music investing, because that's been his dream. But he's never wanted to pursue that dream because it didn't seem like that was what he could do. He goes to McDonald's, he orders chicken nuggets or a hamburger. He didn't think that McDonald's might have like a French toast. Which they don't. But you also don't have to go to McDonald's. You can go to a different store. So
exactly. There's a
yeah.
famous quote like, live the life that you want to live, not the life that others expect of you.
Yes.
And I know this generation has so much pressure to live under expectations right now, especially now that we're in the AI era. I'm sure we're going to see all kinds of AI companies, and it's tempting, right? So I understand where the students come from. I was in their shoes not too long ago and totally get that. But at the same time, I'm glad that there's people like you who post really amazing content, totally worth following, who can help guide people along that path. You've helped guided me personally along my career journey too. I run a data vendor. Would I ever expect to run a data vendor? Absolutely not. What kid grows up saying I want to run a data company? Absolutely not. But yeah, it's incredible to see kind of where people end up, and really grateful for your help there. And speaking of support and resources, by the way, are there any favorite kind of books or podcasts, newsletters, videos, anything really that...
Well, let's just go with the books that everyone should read. The most important books I've ever read in my entire life. First, the best book, the Bible of investing, nobody gives it credit, is Big Deal. It's 1,050 pages, written by Bruce Wasserstein, who was a multi-billionaire who died in 2012. Bruce Wasserstein was the greatest investment banker of all time. He was so scary, Henry Kravis paid him $40 million to stay on the sidelines during the Argent Nabisco situation. He founded Wassim Perella. He ran Lazard Frere. He was just a super genius. The man looked like a disheveled because he didn't care. He was just all about, and his sister actually was also the impressive playwright Wendy Wasserstein. Brilliant family. But his book, Big Deal, encapsulates how valuations move from various cycles and various decades, from the 1950s to 2000, better than anything I've ever come across. And his book inspired me to short AOL Time Warner in 2000, 2001, because it really outlined the Time Warner merger in 1991 and the EV to EBITDA multiple. And it's a delicious historical portrayal of multiples. and understanding why multiples go up and why multiples go down. And yes, it's interest rate, and there's more to it than just interest rates, of course. And when you can kind of smell the end of a bubble and how to smell the end of a bubble, it's just a brilliant read. Christina, I really recommend you read it as well, of course. And then there's my personal favorite, Liar's Poker. I'm a big John Merriweather fan. I worked for an LTCM sub fund, so I was involved. And I was personally involved in 98 August when it went down. And so I've always been fascinated by LTCM. And When Genius Failed is a good book to look at and follow up to Liar's Poker. But When Genius Failed and Liar's Poker are nothing compared to Big Deal of Bruce Wasserstein. That is the best investment book I've come across in my entire life that everyone must read. And I'm actually publishing in the next few days a book of the best quant books. I asked Jean-Philippe Bouchard, I asked Igor Halperin, Alex Lipton, Marcus, all of what their favorite quant book was. And I asked like 20 master's program heads also. So it's like 6 books. But anyway, this was a pleasure, Christina. You're one of my heroes. I'm a huge fan of Databento. I'm a huge fan of Christina.
Thank you, Alex. I'm a big fan of you as well. Thank you for doing this. Appreciate all your time here today, and looking forward to checking out those books you mentioned and coming to your conference in April.
Awesome. Be well, Christina.